All right, my people. So the first thing I want to talk about with taxes, right? The first misnomer I want to tell you is a common conception of how taxes are calculated and formulated. A lot of people think taxes shows your tax bracket based on your income. That's what you owe. So, for example, if someone makes $100,000 in a year, and their tax bracket is, let's say for easy math, 20%, they believe, oh man, I owe $20,000 in taxes. That is the biggest lie. That is not how taxes work. I'm going to explain it to you. Stay tuned. I'm going to show you a few more minutes and you're going to understand more about how taxes are broken up, okay? I want you to think more of buckets. There are more buckets that have to be filled, and then you're taxed on the bucket, then you're taxed on the total of what you're bringing. Okay, so the first thing I did is I get the info from the horse's mouth. Okay, we got IRS website here. It says you pay a tax percentage of your income in layers called tax brackets. As income goes up, the tax rate goes up on the next layer of income higher. So when it jumps to the next bracket, you don't pay tax on everything. You pay tax on the higher rate above the part that's in the new tax bracket. So example for a single payer, right? You got tax brackets, 10%, $0, 12%, 10 grand, 22%, 41, etc. As it goes up, you pay more and more tax on what you have. But if you look at someone who made $58,000 per year, this is how they're taxed. 10% on the first 10 grand, 12% on the remaining funds up to 41 grand, and then only the portion above that 41 up to 58 is taxed at 22%. Stick with me now, I'm gonna break down the math for you. We take 10% of 10,275, we get $1,027.50. Now for the next set, we take the 10,275, subtract it from the 41,775, we get 31,500. And now that is taxed at 12%. So you get $3,780 that is taxed on that amount. At this point, we've used up $41,775 of the $58,000 income. You subtract those two numbers, you get $16,225. Multiply that portion by 22% and you get $3,569.50. So you see, you only get taxed on the amount of money in each tiered bracket. As you make more money, you get taxed more on the amount that's in that bracket above. Now, when you add all these together, you're going to get the total amount of tax the person owes for that calendar year. Now, if we calculated the taxes based on what the common misconception is, that the tax bracket of the income you make is how all of your money is taxed, you would owe at 22% on $58,000, $12,760. But in reality, because of the multi-tiered tax system, you only owe the $8,377. Now let's estimate on the W-2 that you receive from your employer shows that they took out $12,000 in the year in payroll deductions. From the math that is mathing, you actually only owed $8,377 in taxes. You were overtaxed for the year. That's your money and you're owed it back. So you're going to get a tax return, $3,623. This didn't even account an example for the earned income tax credit, child tax credits, if you itemize your deductions, or even if you took the standard deduction. Even if we took the standard deduction, which I didn't talk about here, we would take right off the top $14,600 from the 58 grand that was earned. And then we'd fill those buckets again with $14,600 less. So the amount of tax this person owed in reality, if they took the standard, would be even less than what I showed in the example, showing how, when people talk about the tax system and the tax brackets and how they're getting cheated and robbed and all this, if they understood a little bit more about how it worked, I don't think they'd feel that way quite as much. Maybe people in the top tiers, but not in the lower for sure. Now, if we extrapolate this a little bit further, you'll see in this chart from the Tax Foundation that people that make in the bottom 50% of income in our country are paying about 3% of the tax in our country, where people that earn the highest amount are actually paying much larger dollar values. And now that you understand the buckets, you can easily see why the people that are rich are paying the majority of our taxes. A little bit further, 1% of the taxpayers that pay the highest amount paid over $700 billion. The bottom 90% paid $450 billion. So that's saying 1 out of 100 people paid more in tax than 90 people's taxes combined. That is crazy. I mean, if you had 100 people and you put them all together and added 90 people's income together and then calculated their taxes, you could take one person out of that 100, add up all their income and their taxes, and it's more than double what all 90 people paid if you added their tax bill all together. Now for this last tidbit, to explain a little bit about why, my personal opinion, why I think we have a tiered tax system, is because if you look at how much it costs for you to live in a year, if you make more income, to live a reasonable life, it doesn't take as much of a percentage of what you made to make that happen. So if someone makes $50,000 in a year and they had to pay 8 or 9 of it in taxes, they only had $42,000 to live. If someone makes $1 million in a year and you took away 50% of that and they had 500,000 to live on, they could still live a very above average lifestyle compared to most other people. That's the rationale behind why the tax system is tiered and why people that make more pay more. It's not necessarily fair, but life ain't fair. That's how things are in the world. I figure out, there's a system, we live in it. Let's figure out how to navigate the system the best we can. Now, with the taxpayers' money is actually used for economically, politically, everything else, that's a whole different discussion. But the numbers are there. It shows that people that make more are actually paying more than people who make less. And the people who pay more are actually paying like way more than people who make less.